Hello, welcome to Only God Rescued Me, my journey from satanic ritual abuse. I'm Lisa Meister, your host. Today we have returning with us John Smith and Lynn Sutherland. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Lynn.
Morning, John. I think we interviewed you about a year ago already.
Yeah, I think we've talked twice.
So give me an update. How are you doing?
I think I'm doing pretty good. I continued to do my healing and working on learning my parts, adjusting to this life, and I'm working on writing my book, which has been an interesting journey. So
your memoir?
Yes. Yep.
And how about you, Lynn? How are you doing? Give me an update.
I'm doing good. I'm about halfway through my book now. I'm lining up the chapters for my book coach. So hopefully it'll get along smoother here.
What does a book coach do for you?
Rebecca Davis.
But what does a book coach do? How do they help you?
How does she ask me questions? She reads my material and sees where I could probably put more into or more thought into something that I put in a paragraph, and try to string things together more smoothly.
Wonderful. So today we're talking about writing a memoir, which is not an easy thing to do. John, how has it been for you so far?
It's been very difficult at times. Much more difficult than I thought it would be. I thought I would just sit down and write it all out and it'd be easy and be done. I guess I underestimated that quite a bit. But as you write, you're processing more and you're stirring up a lot of, at least I am, stirring up a lot of emotions and just trying to balance all that along the journey of writing, I guess. But yeah, it kind of surprised me how difficult it's been.
Did you find the emotions as you were writing fit how you felt at the time going through it? Like even like the impact of a flashback, those intense feelings hitting you as you're writing?
To some extent, I think a lot of mine has been more guilt. I'm struggling with a lot of guilt, and I have been since I started writing. So I think it's a lot of programming coming up that I haven't identified yet. And then a lot of fears. I've been struggling with that quite a bit.
Fears of what?
Well, the what ifs, like what if you're wrong? Fears of, I don't know, upsetting people, tarnishing the family name. That's a big one. Just, yeah, a lot of those messages that I received growing up.
Sure.
Yeah.
How about you, Lynn?
I found my emotions actually while writing the book. I wasn't able to connect with my emotions before at all. And that's what Rebecca told me would probably happen. And it has been healing. At the same time, I'm struggling with some of the things that John's also struggling with. But we have learned ways to cast out those demons and weed through all that. And I think those methods that we're using from Dr. Scott Biscombe is really very helpful. And John, you may want to try that also.
Okay.
Because it sounds like a lot of demons are attacking you that shouldn't be there at all. A lot of what we go through, we should not feel guilty for because we had nothing to do with it, most of us. Granted, we would have taken a different course of action, I'm sure, if we'd had one, and it wasn't there for us. But I think I'm struggling now with trying to get back to it. I'm pretty sure that Satan is using a demon to trying to block me. And so I'm trying to go through the methods of casting out the demon, getting him onto the pit so I can keep going forward. It is a struggle. It's a big struggle. As far as the family thing, my daughter believes that I am an SRA, but she does not believe I have parts. And that's ironic because she's a mental health therapist. So I don't know that she will buy any of my story from my my books or anything that I've said, but I'm not writing it for her. I'm writing it to honor God for what he has pulled me through.
What are some of the overwhelming feelings you have had?
Well, with me, been pain, because I haven't been able to get connected to that pain. I've had the anger for so long and the depression so long covering all that, that trying to get underneath the core problem, which is the wound, the pain, has been very difficult. I've had no guilt, but I have also gone through, but what if this isn't true thing. I think that's probably straight across the board. Most of us survivors have gone through that because of all the stuff that we go through, the drugs they use and the mind games they play, or make us think that, no, we haven't gone through that we're making it up. So again, I think it's a demon issue and God can clear all that up.
Elena Pacala calls that ping-ponging. You go back and forth, and that's tough.
It is.
No, I'm sorry. It's very exhausting.
It is. It really is. I quit at some point, and I've tried to figure out when that happened, and I really can't come up with it. It just was so gradual, which is kind of funny. Like when I put the book out, you know, I had no questions anymore about mine. So mine came out in 2017, so it's been out a little while. But the emotions just were awful. I was so depressed while I was writing it, upset, suicidal, you know, because we've got that don't tell programming. Obviously, writing is the ultimate telling of it. Like I was so bad. All 4 kids still lived here at the time. Nobody likes my book. They're all so mad about this book because of how rough it was on me and all of them when I wrote it. So I don't think any of my kids have read it or probably ever will read it. But, you know, it kicks you. It's tough.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I would call those healthy scars for the kids. They may not think so, but.
How do you see it as a healthy scar? That's interesting.
Because you are healing, and your healing is going to help you and their relationship. And in the long term, they can look back and say, Mom went through a difficult time, and look at the benefits that came from it. And
That's
what
true.
did we learn from it? Yeah.
Thank you for that. Now I feel better. I mean, because you feel like it's this selfish thing you're doing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because of the toll it takes, you know, in the family. Yeah. So what do you consider to be the writing phases? Any ideas?
I go excitement, pure work, torture, and hopefully one day relief.
Do you agree with those, Lynn?
I do, and I also realize that when I get through one phase, I'm able to make some connection to my past that helps bring me clearer thinking about where I've been through. And even though it's hard as it is to write about it and get it on paper, I look forward to what God's going to tell me about it. And he always tell me something that will relieve the fear and the negative emotions and get me back to his love for me. So for me, that's a positive in writing this. I'm hoping it'll help someone maybe along the way to
So
not
you're
be
finding
fearful.
healing at every cycle then.
Yes, yes,
That's powerful.
yes, it is.
I think I just kind of plowed through. Just tried to get it done, you know. How did you decide to write the book? John?
I've always wanted to write a book, and so I guess that's always been there. But I don't know if I know how or why I decided to write the book. Part of it is it just needs to be told. The story needs to be told because there is somebody out there that hopefully it will benefit and help. So that's part of it. That's a good question. I haven't thought about it. I don't know. It just seemed like the next right thing to do.
How about you, Lynn?
Well, I also thought I wanted to write a book from quite a while back, but I never knew what kind of book until I went to a recent retreat in 2021. And one of the survivors told me, Lynn, I think you should do a book on the story of your life. And I was like, really? Well, how do I start? So God will show you. So the very next retreat, I met up with Rebecca Davis and God went to her prayer ministry. And then she brought up about the book and I should go ahead and go forward with it and she would help. We discussed the costs and things that she is very affordable. And I really appreciate everything that she does for me. But I just never imagined it would be this kind of book. You always want to write something that is real positive and millions of people want to read it and that kind of thing. And it turns out to be this. But this is what God wants me to do. So I'm going to get it done.
That's good. I think for me, it was just this like unction from God that I needed to do it. I just really felt like that's what he wanted me to do. Then it's really hard to work on it. So how do you make yourself do it? John?
Sometimes I don't make myself do it, which is good and bad. One of the things I decided, I don't know how, probably 6 months ago, was that I wasn't going to force this and I was going to let it come to me. And that has worked pretty well, though I've caught myself avoiding it on purpose at times. And I was like, okay, we got to get back to it. And then I just write what I need to get out and then I can stop and then I'll go back to it. That has been helpful to me. I think a year ago, I did spend a week in a hotel and just organized all my materials and kind of, that was beneficial for me. I just had to get out of my house because I couldn't do it in my house. So I just spent a week there and laid everything out and organized it, and that was helpful. But yeah, I try to let it come to me, but there's a sense of urgency now. So that'll probably change a little bit. Yeah, I need to get back to it.
How about you, Lynn?
For me, I didn't know really where to start except at the very beginning of my life. Bits and pieces of what I started to remember, and then God clarified everything. Praying before each writing session really helps me. I grew up not being able to understand English writing because I wasn't taught. And that comes from being, I was born hearing, and my parents did some rituals that caused the deafness. And so I've had to learn to deal with the deafness in a different way, but in a very negative environment in which I was living. So they were very cautious about giving me any education on anything. I was grateful for one teacher teaching me how to read, and that's how I took off on everything. I started teaching myself some of the things I needed to learn. But writing has been the biggest obstacle to overcome, just because of putting these different sentences together and then coming up with these emotional words and making everything make sense. It's been challenging for me. So.
Putting the emotion in is difficult. It's very hard. How do you do it, Lynn?
I have an emotional chart now that I use. So.
Okay.
And so it really helps me to identify what I'm probably feeling there, and even if I don't know that. That's the biggest thing to help me, because just sitting and thinking about it and not really knowing about emotions, I couldn't come up with anything really except very basic, what maybe a 2 or 3 year old would come up with. So it's been helpful.
So you just write the words like in the sentence, the emotion words? You just add it into your sentence, how you're feeling, like that?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Sometimes what Rebecca will do is she'll bounce it back a different way for me and put a different emotion in there, and it makes more sense. It's almost like it's clicking together better. I almost want her to write the whole thing, but I don't in another way, because it's not her healing process, it's mine. And if I don't write it, I can't continue the healing process. So.
That's a good point. How about you, John? How do you get emotion into what you're writing?
That's a good thought, because I don't always do emotions.
Yeah.
So, and I haven't gone back and started proofreading, which I'm at a different phase than Lynn is, because right now I'm just writing. I write what comes to my mind, and I don't go back. So that'll be interesting to go back and look for the emotions, make sure they're in there. I think I'm identifying the best I can right now. I don't know. I haven't thought about that.
Well, I think it's hard for survivors. We can get very factual in telling horrific things, because we've had to shut down emotions to go through it in the first time.
Yeah.
And then, flashbacks are bringing the emotions in and putting them together with the experience. So these horrific rituals, you're now feeling emotions of it. That's why flashbacks are so chaotic, so horrible. And then we write it, we're trying to put them back together for the people, but it's so much easier to just factually tell them. It's really hard. That's why for me, poetry, I took the poems from those points that I had written while I was healing, and I found that I was much better than just adding the poems in so you could get a feel of what I felt at that point. So that I was lucky to have them and that I could do that. That made it a lot easier for me, because it's just, like even on the podcast, it's so easy just to factually tell you how horrible all this is. And because I do it so much, I'm really good at having no emotion to it, just the way it is. But yeah, there are emotions, and they are very deep, and they are very difficult for us to handle. And that feeling wheel, Lynn, that was my first 2 years of therapy. Just looking at those wheels going, okay, everybody stop. I'm having a feeling, and then trying to identify exactly what it was. I felt like an idiot. It's like, what is the matter with me? Like, oh, what's the difference between, sadness and despair, or that sort of stuff? It's like, I'm not sure where it is. I don't feel good. I feel unhappy. My counselor's like, okay, let's specify what exactly it is. I'm like, what's the definition of this feeling? What's the definition of that feeling? Because when you're never allowed to feel, it's tough.
Yeah, there's only two feelings: sadness and anger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to branch out from that is healthy, because that's life, and you can traverse it better if you can identify what you're feeling. Lynn, like getting to those root wounds, you got to identify what that feeling is. and that's pretty complex.
Well, when I started therapy, all I could feel was depression, and I couldn't get out from under it. I had a very good therapist who was trying to weed through all the problems I was going through. So I was also in domestic abuse at the time. I didn't realize it. And everything around what I was doing was being controlled by my ex-husband now. So it took almost a year to just start to get to the tears. But she kept at it, kept giving me different assignments to keep doing, to try to connect with myself. I had a bear, a stuffed bear that I would pass down to generations, and I'd go ahead and dress the bear up like a human being and pretend it was my baby. But I remembered in one of my memories, I actually have the bear with me, and I only have the bear and a dog. So those two things are two things I keep going back to when I've been upset. Is I still go back to my dogs, or if I have a cat. And the bear sits on a dresser in my bedroom. You almost would think it would be a satanic thing, but it's not. It wasn't given to me through any satanic person or group when I was little. So I always felt safe with the bear. That getting back to the writing, what helps me is think about God's verses as I go through the tough parts. And then when I get back, I just go back to the verse and rephrase it, put my name there, and then continue on, because then I know God is guiding me with that. I've always wanted to write poetry, but I'm not that type of person. I'm not able to write it. So, but God's verses are really powerful for me. So.
How do you help yourself, John, when it's getting hard?
I keep encouraging myself. I tell myself I can do this. Sometimes I walk away from it, pray. Right, those three things.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm learning to do is give myself a break when I need to, because I have a tendency to beat myself up. And as I've noticed in my recovery, that has decreased dramatically. So if I get stuck or get frustrated, I walk away from it, and tell myself that's okay. We can do that. We can take a break. Right now is just not the time. So.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very healthy to be able to do that as a survivor. To make that choice for yourself, I think that's powerful.
Yeah,
How did you come up with the beginning? Like, where do you start in your memoir, John?
I start at conception.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it hard to find a timeline for you as you're writing?
No, I don't think so. I just start there, and I'm starting there and going on. Because God has revealed to me the story of my adoption, how that all took place, and how I was adopted into the family I was, and I just am carrying it from there.
Okay.
How about you, Lynn?
For me, I've just learned something from Dr. Scott. Being aware of the sound, which I didn't hear, but I could have the sense of smell and touch, puts me in more, gives me a better idea of what I'm writing about from that point. It feels, right now it feels very scattered because I have so many parts from just those first 5 years that I've weaved through at least 6 of them, but I think there's still more there that I haven't touched base with. But it helps me just to try to focus on what's coming up at that time. I can't write a lot at one time. I have to, it's almost like reading a book that's really good, but it's very intense, and reading too much at one time and I have to give myself time to digest. So the writing's the same thing. If I write too much at one time, I'm so overwhelmed that the day it's pretty hard for me to try to weed through what I normally need to do for that day. So I've learned how to take bite sizes and do each section as I can.
Chronologically, are you just going from beginning of life and on, or are you going back and forth a bit?
I'm beginning at the beginning of life. I don't know about conception, but at birth.
See, I had trouble coming up with the chronology of things. So mine, I was just kind of like, let me tell you this, but to tell you this, I got to go back and explain this, so this will make sense. Now let's go into this. Oops, now let me explain this. So this, I felt disjointed in my own timeline. So that was really tough for me. What are the pros of writing your memoir, John?
You're healing as you do it. And anytime you write something, it becomes permanent. That's important for me, the permanency. And also, I can leave that for my kids. And so they'll hopefully understand me a little bit better and the things I did. And I don't know. And hopefully in some way I'm glorifying God what I'm doing with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Lynn? Pros of writing for you?
Pros of writing right now are obviously healing, the same as John. I'm not sure that anybody will actually read it that I know, and that's okay. It also shows me how much God has already taken me through and that he's never going to forsake me. So it's incredible how he used our different parts, or how he used my different parts to pull me through and to store memories until I was ready for them. I just have a greater love and appreciation for God while I'm going through all this.
Good. John, cons of writing?
The emotional toll on me, on myself, my body, the anxiety, the guilt.
Yeah, the guilt's hard because they program that in so strong. I remember them forcing me to do stuff, and then they'd be chanting guilty, guilty, and I'm like, yeah, I am. I did it. It's tough.
I've realized through writing the book that I have layers of guilt.
Oh.
That I just thought it was all guilt. No, there's just layers that go deeper and deeper. Yeah, that has been surprising.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're healing through some of those layers yet?
Yeah, I think I am. It was interesting last week in my prayer session. That was a big topic of guilt, and then give myself permission to let that go, not burden myself with that.
Good. Lynn, do you have cons? Oh, I'm sorry, John. Keep going.
No, you're fine. No, that's probably all the cons I have.
Okay. Lynn?
Me. I've had a little bit of financial struggle with it, but God has shown me that he's going to be able to pull me through. For example, I have 2 job opportunities that just popped out of nowhere close to home. And so one of those might materialize. I've also been told I don't need to worry about the funds, that somehow everything just come to a complete circle, and I'm able to make things come together and meet. Emotional toll. I think because I'm still learning about myself at this stage, that the emotions are a good thing. I'm trying not to focus on any of the negative that the enemy wants us to focus on. just stay with God. It's hard. I mean, I have good days and I have bad days. But on my bad days, I just take a break and go do something completely different than what I've been doing, and get in touch to what's actually going on around me, noticing the beauty of the trees or the birds or whatever. Then after I've had that break, I come back to it and I have a different outlook on my writing. But the cons, I guess, is just keeping myself motivated to keep moving forward, to get through this, get to the other side. I finally set a deadline so that I would focus more, and the deadline is next year. I would like the book done by next year. So that means I've got to kick into gear and keep moving forward with it.
Why is it important to find your voice?
Ooh, for me, my voice was taken away shortly after birth through deafness. And then I was programmed to stay quiet. So I don't think I actually made many sounds when I was little, just because everything around me scared me so bad. I just kept everything inside. I was afraid to move, that I would do the wrong thing and I would get punished. I found my voice, truly, I think when I was 16 and I started advocating for people with special needs. Interesting enough, I didn't think it involved me, but we were talking about hard of hearing people, children growing up, and what they can do with their lives. And I was still in high school, everybody else was in college, so it was in my group. But I really liked doing that. But now I want to look at advocating for survivors more in a positive sense, that it's okay for them to be where they're at as long as they don't hurt themselves, causing more damage than it's already been done. I think I want to do something more positive. I like being an encourager and I love praying for them, but I would also like to just do something that is more supportive. I don't know what that looks like right now. So.
Very good. John, why is it important to find your voice?
Because I'm important enough to be heard. I spent many years not being heard, and I have a lot of parts that were not heard over the years. So, but I have not really thought about that question before. I think that's part of the reason the book's coming out, which also makes it probably difficult to be heard. Like Lynn, I too was to be quiet. You know, that whole, children to be seen, not heard, not respected. Yeah.
That's hard.
Yes, it is.
I know when I put my book out, it's like, who in the world is going to read this? It's like, no one's going to want to read this book. And yet they do, and it's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Should a survivor feel bad if they don't want to write a memoir, or if they can't write a memoir? John?
No, I don't think everybody's called to write or needs to write. You can get your story out another way. If it's a burden on your heart, do it. If not, don't worry about it.
Lynn, what do you think?
I think I'm finding survivors do different things for healing, which I think is really cool. And not necessarily writing a book, but some do poetry, and some actually do pictures, taking photographs and putting them together, stringing them together, that can tell a story about what they've been through. But I think it needs to be a creative mode. Some paint and can get their expressions out that way. God will use most anything to help the survivor get wherever they want to go and understanding where they've been.
I have a friend who writes music about it. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Is it dangerous for us to tell our story? John?
Depends who you ask inside. Um, yeah.
I'm really making you think today, aren't I?
Yes, you are. I have not thought about these.
I just want to remind you that this was your idea.
Yeah, I know. But I had a different plan than this. But anyways, different thoughts. Next time we'll have to prepare better, or I will. Is it dangerous? Logically, no. Unconsciously, yes. But see, to me, that's my parts that aren't healed and are still scared. And you know, God is always protecting me. He's always walking before me. And I got to keep remembering that. And that's something I struggle with. I like to do it all myself. So I forget about God and we just go in our own way. And yeah, but no,
Lynn,
just
do
be
you think
prepared.
Yeah.
Be prepared.
For,
I think, I don't know if prepared is the right word, or be accepting of what you don't know yet and what you haven't experienced yet. That's different. I do prayer ministry and that opens up wounds, but it's almost like a different category and a different wound being opened up. When you put it on paper, and I guess it makes it more real.
Yeah. Seeing it on a white page.
Yes.
It's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
How about you, Lynn? Is it dangerous?
I think it's not so dangerous, I don't think. But at some point, I still worry about judgment. I'm hoping I can just get rid of that because it's really not something that I need to be concerned about, what people think about me or where I've been or my story. I'm now able to start talking about my story more freely without judgment. I haven't had any negative repercussions yet. People haven't dropped me and run the other way. Some just choose not to believe it. That's up to them. But I think we each know what we've been through and what God's trying to do with each of us. So I'm just hanging on to Him, the Holy One, and pulling myself through that way.
I remember when my book was all done and I had the proof copy, and then I did mine through Amazon. So then I had to choose to publish it or not. You just have to click the little box. And I took it to church and I asked the pastor if I could have the sanctuary. So I went in during the week. I had it all by myself and I put it on the altar. And I was literally pasted against the wall as far away from my book as I could get. It's like, okay, God, I'm having a lot of second thoughts right now. I'm really not sure. This has to be your idea, or there's no way I'm doing this. And it just took slowly praying, and I'd take a step, and it took a while. And then finally I was there and I just got on my face. It's like, okay, this is your idea. So you're going to have to protect me. Here we go. But in some ways it was this relief because it's like they could kill me over this. That's, we go through those rituals that this is what's going to happen to you. So I felt that was a possibility, but it was like, but if my book's out there, they can't kill my story. So what they did to me will always be out there. And it just made me feel better in some ways, some strange, I don't know. It was big for me.
That's very empowering, to know that our story is going to be out there and like listen to you share that. Yeah, they can kill me and take me away, but you can't take away the truth in the story. It's there now.
Yeah.
In a way, it's almost like, well, I won. Finally, I won. But yeah.
Well, because we don't have a voice, then if we live our life and then die without ever being able to say,
Mhm.
then I would, it would seem like then they do win in that
Yeah.
way. This way it's like, no, you cannot intimidate me. You cannot make me speak. I will be heard. And God's giving us this great platform in this season that's never been out there before, where you can self-publish, which is what I did because I couldn't get any publishers to pick my book up. They're like, no, I don't want to touch your book. Or I could, we can have a podcast. We can talk
Mhm.
about it. It's wonderful. And this has never existed before. So we're in this really sweet place in the world right now where God is giving us the ability to connect with each other. And I think it's part of his exposing SRA, because we can all get our stories out there. You go and you look at all the survivor stories right now and you're like, whoa, maybe we should pay attention to this, because look how many
Mhm.
people it's happening to. It's not just an isolated, oh, well, you're just, okay, maybe it happened to you in this one small town, but really, how big is this? It's like, okay, let's start talking about how many survivors that are out there, because we're all connecting now. It's powerful.
Yeah, it's a very unique time that
Yeah.
we can touch the whole world is, in seconds.
And for those of you financially, like I was able to put my book out for nothing. I got friends to edit it for me. I had a friend make the cover for me. People came together and we were able to accomplish it. Amazon, they've got a lot of free resources and you can just create it. It's amazing. And, some people go through pay to publish sort of places, and that works if you got some money to put towards it, or like Lynn, Book Coach, if you can afford that, it's a good way to go. Have you decided how you're going to publish yours, John?
No, I haven't got that far yet.
Lynn?
I'm going to wait until Rebecca tells us we're done. That she feels like it's a good stopping point.
Then figure it out. So, John, I took this over, but what was it that you were thinking about for today?
Let's see. I had a list of things I wrote down that I guess one of them when we talked about that, just uncovering wounded parts that I had not had a voice yet. That was a surprise to me. Even though I should know better, each session I find another part, another person in there, but and then the parts competing to write is interesting.
Oh.
Yeah, that would be my other book I'm doing. I'm doing two books. Yeah, they like to. There's a couple parts that both want to write, and that can be fun sometimes. Entertaining if you embrace it.
So are both books then a memoir?
No, the other one's just a fictional story.
Okay.
Yeah. And another thing I had is the emotional toll. It shows on your face at times, and I've had friends who say you're not happy, and that has been very frustrating for me. It's like I'm very happy and I had joy in my life for the first time. It's like I'm just writing my book, and they don't understand that, and that's a difficult walk at times, because you try to explain what you're doing and what you're writing about, and if they haven't experienced it, they can't understand it. So that's been a learning experience. I've had to learn to give grace to them, and also to be direct and just say I'm just struggling right now. I'm okay, but I guess for your listeners, that's just something. If you come across that, give yourself permission to do that, because you spend a day or two just down as you've been processing and writing, and then you just struggle with rabbit trails at times. It's like, okay, come on, we gotta redirect. So you line everybody back up and you get going.
Sometimes it's hard to know what the important parts are and what they're not when you're looking at your own story. So like interesting thing for me is when people react to my book, what parts they're interested in, and what parts don't mean a lot to them. It's just always like, I have no idea, because for me it's all the, I dealt with this, and they're like, oh, that was interesting, what happened.
Yeah. I think all parts are important. So we'll see what happens. That was it. Kind of things that I was thinking about.
Thank you. Lynn, did you have anything else about your writing process you wanted to discuss?
One thing I've done is listen to other people who are trying to write their stories. And I'm noticing some SRAs use the parts to write the entire book. I don't see anything wrong with that. I find it interesting. I don't think mine would do that because they can't talk and they can't write. So they could just show me pictures and point to things, and I try to figure out stuff. But I'm thinking that for me, it's just a process of trying to figure out my emotions. My emotions are so important to me now, because before I couldn't even get to my heart of what was going on. And now, in one of my sessions with one of my SRA friends, we came up with, after praying, God let me know that I needed to take the armor and the shield off my heart in order to be able to start feeling the feelings. I didn't realize that before, because I used to look at therapists and realize that in my mind's eye that they were being mean, or I couldn't trust them, so they couldn't help me. But once I took the shield off, now I can realize there's people around me that can really help me if I just listen and just go with the flow. So.
Yeah, we need some good people around us that understand, can come alongside. They get the bigness of what we're doing.
Yeah.
I hope both of you will come back when you finish your stories and get your books out, and we can discuss them. That would be a lot of fun. And also, like, it can be a little anticlimactic at first. You get it done and you get it out there and it's published. And then there's this letdown, like, now what do I do? It's like, what's next? Because you've been trying for so long to write this thing. And I just thought, like, maybe somebody would let me come and give a testimony in a church. Nope. Nobody wanted to hear about it. You just got to wait on God's timing and for him to bring about what you want it to do. And the best response I ever had in my book was from my husband, because he said he stayed up all night reading it because he had to finish it. And I'm like, you already know what happened. He goes, I know, but I just had to hear how you were going to say it. So it's like, that's the best compliment I've had on my book, I think.
That's a very nice compliment.
Yeah. It's like, you lived it with me. You knew. There was nothing new in there. So kind of funny. So it'll be fun to see how people respond or don't respond after. It's just kind of fascinating to see how people react to you. And some people think you're really weird for putting it out there, or you're really weird because you're an SRA survivor and you're saying you are. It's like, I remember asking God to change my testimony. It's like, Lord, I don't want to be a satanic ritual abuse survivor. Can you give me a different testimony? He does a lot of head shaking with me, I think. He's like, no, because this is what you got. It's like, yeah, I know, but nobody wants to hear it. But
yeah, they don't want to hear anything at all about it.
Yeah.
It scares them too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to a new church right now. And so there was like a pitch-in dinner after church, and people start so what do you do questions. And I'm like, so I just said, I don't do anything. I'm a freeloader. My husband's like, no, she's not. She's, and he's like, she's a writer. And they're like, oh, what do you write about? I'm like, here we go. That's what I don't want to get into. But it's like, yeah, it's who I am. You can't You can't take your past out of who you are now because it's just too intricately connected. I'm an
And for
SRA.
me, I've spent too many years running from that.
Yeah.
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 It's time to just stand.
Yeah.
I'm also grateful that we have the courage now to come forward and talk about this, because it is so prevalent in our world and people want to pretend like it's not around. And it is. It's impacting all these generations that are coming up and past generations. So trying to get the courage to talk about it more and not be ashamed of it. That's the biggest thing I think I face, is the shame, and I didn't do anything to cause it. So I have to keep going back to God and dealing with that and figuring out why there shouldn't be any shame there. He's not ashamed of me, so I shouldn't be ashamed of myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But perpetrators always put their shame on their victims. That's just what they do. So as victims, we got to learn to say, not mine.
Yeah.
Wasn't me.
And the other thing is, the things that we did or had to do were very shameful.
Yeah.
And sometimes that gets confused.
Right.
You know?
How do you handle, like, how much detail to go into in your book, John?
It depends on my mood. But I also try not to, the thought process, do no harm. So I try to keep that back in my mind. Yeah, I had a friend explain to me before. It's like, she said, you want to tell enough that you'll have credibility, but don't tell anymore too much that you're harming people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my husband always reminds me, we want people to sleep at night. Like, good point.
Yeah.
How about you, Lynn?
Well, Rebecca tells me all the time to keep it to what the readers will want to read, their perspective of it. So I kind of go back and forth, but then I have to turn around and think the way she's wanting me to, write the way she's wanting me to, so that it's reader appropriate. I'm just hoping it all turns out okay.
Yeah. And it depends on the readers, because I tried to put enough in that you get the idea. And my 20-year-old daughter is like, Mom, you should just put the whole rituals in there. Just let them know everything. People want to know more. I'm like, I don't think they do. She's like, I do. Like, we haven't had that conversation. So it's like, yeah, I don't think you really do.
Yeah, it's almost like we need two versions.
Yeah.
The
Right.
PG and unfortunately the X-rated version.
Right. Yeah.
But you can't do that.
Yeah. And I don't want to do that.
No.
Like, I want to skim over those things more for me than anybody else. Because, if I have to go into specifics of stuff, I'm right back there again. And I just don't want to go there, which is tough. But like, some people have been asking on the podcast, would you please talk about what SRA is? So like, I'm trying to prep for just doing one that's just a little more in detail, but I know the toll of that's going to be very hard. So like, okay, we'll figure that one out. It's tough.
Yes, it is, but it's interesting. It depends what population you're talking about. Because if you have the population that watches horror films, some of that stuff could be close.
Yeah.
But and then you have the other population, no, that's just way too much.
Yeah. But sometimes even the people watching the horror film saying, I don't want to hear your story.
Yeah, because it's real.
That one's too much for me, but I can go watch all these horror things, and
like,
hard to figure that out.
Where do you think they get the ideals?
Right. Yeah. My husband tells people, go think of the worst horror film you've ever seen. And he's like, and it's not even close. Because he read all my journals, and, he wanted to know exactly what was going on. And, he's like, I would try to come up with well, maybe they did this. And he's like, and the next flashback would come and he's like, oh no, it wasn't even close. You know, it was
Yeah.
way beyond anything I could ever think of.
It's beyond imagination.
Well, the guy that was the head of the satanic temple in South Africa that recently got saved, did you hear about him?
Mhm.
So he was in the middle of a ritual
Yeah.
asking the devil, like, what kind of ritual can I do to go even deeper? And so he was waiting for the devil to tell him some new twisted thing that they hadn't done before. And that's where they hear it from. But in the
Mhm.
midst of his process of doing that, God came to him and he ended up getting saved. Like Jesus
Oh,
showed him.
wow.
Like,
Wow.
it's just incredible. This just
Yeah.
happened a couple months ago, I think, beginning of the summer, maybe. But I mean, the devil leads them to these perversions, and that's why they are so beyond comprehension. Like, how in the world could they figure that out? It's like, because it's demonic. Devil's got these things he can get people to do. Pretty amazing. So hopefully this will get both of you guys a little more energized into finishing your stories.
Definitely, Lisa. What I needed.
You think so, John?
Yeah, it was good timing.
Good.
Yeah. We'll do better for you.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming and sharing with me. I think it was a really good episode.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks,
Thank you.
John.
Yeah.
Bye.